Hi, and thanks for joining me on 101 Ways to Die in an Aircraft, Thunderstorm Edition. Now, before we get too far into this topic, it's important to remember that I will be talking exclusively about convection-style thunderstorms and how they relate to single-engine aircrafts. Now, we'll be covering a couple topics today. We're going to talk about how to make a thunderstorm, how to avoid a thunderstorm, and what to do if you're caught inside a thunderstorm. Jumping right into it with how to make a thunderstorm, we need a couple different components. We need unstable air, a lifting agent, rising and descending currents, and moisture within the air. Unstable air, in the convection sense, is air heated by the sun, which rises, but the ground provides an uneven heating system. This can be caused by buildings, trees, shadows, bodies of water that have more thermal properties, mountains, hills, etc. You kind of get the picture. As the sun heats this ground, we will get different levels of warm air rising. The lifting agent is a very similar concept. So as the sun heats the ground heats the air, and that air rises because it's now warm. Now as we go up in the atmosphere, it cools down, and so does the air. Once it gets cold enough that it becomes heavy again, it falls right back down just to be heated again and start the process once more. Talking about extremes. In normal conditions, unstable air and lifting agents wouldn't do anything, let alone build a thunderstorm. But if we have extreme conditions for these two, it will create a thunderstorm, added with rising and descending currents and moisture. Now, rising and descending currents you can see in convection. Now that's when the ground is hot, heats the air rises and descends, and rises and descends. And now this can happen within the cloud as well, but we'll get more into that later. Moisture can come from a couple different places. Bodies of water, which the sun evaporates and sends into the air, or air masses that carry a lot of humidity, or humid air. Cumulonimbus clouds are our thunderstorm clouds. Now these clouds form from small cumulus clouds made by convection into larger, more turbulent cumulonimbus clouds. Now we can see here that this cloud is very large and puffy, and it creates a very good base to have a big old thunderstorm. Hail is another component which can cause danger to aircraft when it comes to thunderstorms. Hail is created when the cumulonimbus cloud goes above the freezing level. Now when this happens, the air, which is circulating within the cloud, brings water droplets up into that freezing level and then drops them back down. Now as they go into that freezing level, they make small hail balls, and the more times they go around, the bigger the hail gets. Now let's watch this video to explain more about thunderstorms. Hi. Let's talk about how to make a thunderstorm. We need unstable air, a lifting agent. We need rising and descending currents. We need moisture. Let's talk about how all of those combined can make a thunderstorm. So with convection, the sun comes down and heats the ground. Now this heats the air right above the ground. As the hot air rises, it cools off, begins to fall again. This creates a cycle of hot air rising and cold air falling. This cycle, when mixed with moisture, can create clouds. When there's moisture in the air, evaporated water goes up, condenses, and makes tiny visible water droplets, known as clouds. Now convection makes cumulus clouds, and if these conditions continue and are extreme enough, they can make cumulonimbus clouds, and those are the thunderstorm clouds. So as the moisture keeps going up, the cloud keeps getting bigger
and bigger and bigger.
Now because there's so much moisture in the air and in this cloud, it gets very heavy, and that's when the rain starts. Let's take a look inside the cumulus cloud. So now that we can see inside the cumulonimbus cloud, within this cloud, there's a consistent counterclockwise pattern. Now this is when the water droplets are pushed up from the rising hot air and then fall back down from the cold air. But then within the cloud, they're caught by the hot air again and pushed back up. So it makes a big oval. Every time the water droplets go around this, they collide with other water droplets and they get bigger and bigger until rain. Now the dangerous part of this is when hail comes in. So the water droplets go above the freezing line. they make little ice balls, and then they go down, and if the winds are strong enough, they'll be carried back up just to become bigger, and that's when we get hail. As the hail or the water droplets go up and down, they get bigger and bigger until the air isn't strong enough to lift them, and that's when they drop. Because there's this whole cycle, it can actually get spit out of the cloud and go flying in all directions. Now, lightning occurs when there's electrical imbalances between this cloud and the earth. So let's pretend you're a plane flying through this. Inside the cumulonimbus cloud, there's a lot of currents of air. The water droplets are always circulating, which is where we can get the gusts of air, which are very dangerous to airplanes. Dangerous if ice gets into or forms within the carburetor or the engine. Thunderstorm avoidance is your best form of survival. Thank you for watching. All right, so now that we've seen how truly dangerous thunderstorms can be, let's go through some of the ways that we can avoid them. The first thing to think about is that if you get caught in a thunderstorm, the chances of survival are very small. So when you're going out on a flight or planning a flight, make sure to check the weather and make sure to check all of the weather stations along your planned route. Another thing that can save your life is situational awareness. Now, this is very important for pilots. If we can watch the weather and understand what it's doing, we can avoid any possible thunderstorms. On the off chance that you do fly into one, however, here are some of the things that you shouldn't do. As we know, the cumulonimbus cloud has a lot of gusting currents, and this happens both within the cloud and underneath the cloud, which makes trying to land the aircraft nearly impossible, and you can hardly do it safely. Another thing to think about is do not fly up and try to get on top of the storm cell. As we've discovered, there is usually in the cumulonimbus cloud a freezing line. As we go into that freezing line, the chances of the wings collecting ice along with the engine and carburetor can shut the engine down and can be very dangerous. The to-do list if you do fly into a thunderstorm. Don't panic. Turn on your cabin lights, and this will help you avoid lightning blindness. If you already have light saturated into your eyes, you are less likely to have a temporary blindness from the lightning strikes. Keep your heading. Fly straight as you can. Do not try to turn your aircraft, as this can cause added stress on the aircraft's frame and break apart the aircraft in certain situations. Keep as far to the right side of the storm cell as you can. As we found out, the storm moves in a counterclockwise circle, or the gusts of air within the storm, I should say. Now, as we know, the counterclockwise circle, the right side of it is upward drafts, and those upward drafts will keep you in the air way longer. That being considered, keep your altitude as similar as possible. You don't want to go very far up because you might hit the freezing line, and you don't want to go down because you don't know where the ground is. A quick review on everything that we've learned today. To make a thunderstorm, we need 4 components: unstable air, a lifting agent, rising and descending currents, and moisture. Avoidance is the best key to surviving a thunderstorm. Be situational aware and make sure to check that weather before you go out on a flight. Now, if you do get caught inside of a thunderstorm, don't panic. Turn your cabin lights on and fly as straight and steady as possible. Now remember, kids, good pilots know how to get out of sticky situations, but the great pilots don't get into those situations in the first place. Thank you for watching.